Hi, I'm Adrian Bullock, and I am from Oxford University, where I studied modern languages many years ago. I work in a publishing company, and I also teach publishing at a university in Oxford. My interest in education is obvious in that I teach people, and I have been teaching children as well as young adults right for the last 35 years.
My name's Simon Devonport, and I studied English language and literature at Keble College in Oxford, and I now teach with the Enhanced Holistic Language Academy.
Today, we're going to look at the whole idea and what underlines the idea of reading. I see reading as one of the arms in one's repertoire of becoming or being literate. I think writing is very important, one of the indicators of literacy, and I think the other indicator is being able to read. I don't think being read to is part of the literacy definition, but I think being able to read on your own written material of any nature, whether it's a road sign or a book written by a poet or some famous author, all these come under the umbrella of literacy and reading.
That's very true, and you can't really say you truly have a holistic knowledge of a language or a holistic ability with a language until you can both read it and write it, and speak it, of course.
Yeah.
But that's all three of these arms, as you said, are crucial to a complete understanding of that language in question. And of course, we're talking primarily about English language here,
yes.
Which is spoken in English-speaking countries. So let's, I suppose, start by thinking about what are the direct practical uses that a foreign language student might get out of practicing reading exercises in the English language.
Well, I think the first thing about reading anything written is that it is there permanently. So you can go back to it time and time again. It doesn't go away like, say, a listening test or a comprehension test. It's there for you to return to time and time again.
It's also usually, I suppose, there for a good reason, isn't it? People only write things down for people to then read it.
Yes.
So think about road signs, for example,
Yeah.
or signs in railway stations, that sort of thing, platform numbers. It's essential for knowing where you're going, for example, in navigating a foreign city, perhaps.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I know that from my own experience, and I have been in countries where I am effectively illiterate because I cannot read the signs, and as an adult it's actually very frustrating. It can lead to mistakes being made if you can't tell that this is a one-way street and you drive down it, say, in the wrong direction because you couldn't decode the sign.
That's the thing, it's kind of embarrassing almost. It
Yeah.
makes you feel like a child again
Yeah.
when you can't read and understand the world around you. So I think that's in and of itself, that is an important reason why you should take reading a foreign language very seriously, especially if you're intending to work or stay in that foreign country for a period of time.
But I think also that underneath this, we have the, if you like, the immediately practical aspects of being able to read and decode signs and so on. But I think there's also the, if you like, the cultural aspect of reading, where you're reading in different registers, you're reading different kinds of work, you're reading poetry, you're reading stories, you're reading history, you're reading lists of things. It's incredibly important for someone to be given that rich diversity, which I think helps them to develop their own style and also to develop an understanding of how style and different sentence structures and word use and vocabulary are all arrived at.
I think, it offers a really good way at understanding a culture holistically. If you can understand the kind of words that indicate different situations, it might even end up informing how you then speak when you're in that culture. If you understand that these kind of words are used in an informative sense, or these ones are perhaps used in a conversational context, or on road signs, or an instruction manual if you're building a piece of furniture or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But you can only really engage with that if you read the written word wherever you find it.
Yeah. Now, I think the reading, if you're reading on your own, by its very nature, is a solitary occupation. That is, if you're sitting in a room, you're reading, you are, if you like, engaging with the culture of that writer.
One-on-one.
One-on-one. And it's very important, I think, in a world where there is so much stimulus, which comes from television, from the visual aspects of our life, that you are actually able to take that time out of the hustle and bustle and sit down and work in a different space, if you like, looking at this book or this magazine or newspaper. It doesn't have to be books. It can be an entire range of materials.
And a different pace as well, a different speed. I think it's important to nurture an ability to sit still, you know, and to concentrate on the written word and tune out all the kind of noise of everyday life if you're going to really understand something, because you can't always skim over something. You can't always take a glancing interest at a text or a piece of writing. Sometimes you really have to read it to understand it. I mean, think about contracts or something like that, where there's a tremendous amount of writing and small print, and for your own good, it's very essential that you engage with the whole piece of reading material from top to bottom without skipping any of the stuff in between.
And I think also that if you are trained at school to read, you're going to be trained to read in a graded kind of way. So we're going to start out with simple vocabulary, simple pronunciation. I mean, English is actually a very difficult language to, if you like, to speak properly in terms of its grammar, as well as in terms of its pronunciation. I mean, when we say cough, C-O-U-G-H, but we say rough, R-O-U-G-H.
Or through.
Or through, T-H-R-O-U-G-H. How do we know which one of these we're going to have to use? So I think that with adequate training from the part of the teacher, the child can almost derive a pleasure from navigating these complex sounds and mastering them, so that they become more and more fluent in the speed with which they read this, but then they import with them and extract from the page the meaning, the pronunciation, the structures, the sentence patterns, and so on, and will import these into their own language.
Yeah, indeed. And I think it's also important to associate those sounds with the shape of the letters on the page as well. O-U-G-H, for example, being a really good example. And so they can discern not only the similarities between words, but begin to differentiate between them as well, only by seeing them next to each other. And then, you know, maybe later on that will help you identify some cough and cold medicine in a pharmacy or something. I mean, the number of times I've been caught out in a foreign country and I need some medicine and I don't know the native term for what I need. It's very important practical applications for learning these subtle differences between written words, I think.
Mm-hmm. So I think basically, where do we start with reading? I think that reading is a habit. I think the habit is one that should be encouraged by the school. But I think there's also a responsibility on the part of the parents to introduce their child to the idea of being read to, if you like, from a book.
For pleasure.
For pleasure. Like, for example, when you go to bed at night or when you come home from school, having your tea or something, your mother or your father, if they happen to be there, will read to you and say, you know, we're going to have a 20-minute reading session. It's a bonding experience between parent and child. But there comes a point when the child will say, look, I actually want to start reading for myself.
And choosing what their child reads as well.
Exactly.
To think independently about what kinds of interesting cultural material you're going to engage with. And perhaps you've seen something on television or a film and you'd like to read the source material, the original perhaps. It's invaluable for those kind of things.
And I think that's the most interesting point. And one which I think is amazing is that there you have, say, the story of Treasure Island. It's spelt out on the page in a series of letters, which are arranged into words, these words arranged into sentences. A child's imagination is entirely stimulated by these words. They don't know what Captain Hook looks like or whatever. No, it's not Captain Hook, it's Long John Silver.
That's the one.
With his one leg and his parrot on his shoulder. Has he got a beard? Is he dark-skinned? Does he got a hooked nose? Does he have fingers missing?
There is no correct interpretation.
No correct interpretation. And I think this is what reading gives you in a way that film doesn't. I mean, the character of Long John Silver in Treasure Island, say, in a cartoon or an actual proper movie with real actors in it, these are there forever, stamped. You can't,
you can't see past them.
You can't see past the characterization of those people that has been given to you by the filmmaker. But with the book, every single child that reads that same passage is going to get something different.
Exactly.
In terms of the interpretation and the imagination that is stimulated by these solitary words standing there year in, year out on the page, waiting in that book to be opened.
Absolutely, and it's only by engaging with the written word in that way that you can create these own worlds for yourself and break through, the images you're given every day and create your own imaginative spaces and worlds there for you. And I suppose, again, we should just not forget that we as English speakers, native English speakers, we are looked after far better in other countries regarding, road signs and things like that, the written word in English, than vice versa. Yeah. We have it very good. and not everyone does have it that way. So, I mean, from a purely practical point of view, it's a great help to engage with written English as soon as you possibly can if you want to appear more native and slip seamlessly from one culture to the next, one country to the next, for whatever reason, maybe a holiday, maybe university or your career, or perhaps, you've got a friend who lives in another country. The possibilities are endless, I suppose.
They are.
I suppose another concern when a child is learning English as well is preventing the kind of problems that often turn up when you try to literally translate from one language to another. I mean, that kind of results in, what do you call it, Chinglish, perhaps?
Or Japlish.
Japlish, yeah. There's a French one as well, like Fringlish? Franglais, yes, indeed.
Yes, right.
And these kind of problems, they stay with you for life if you don't address them, because you learn the wrong way and you end up, these mistakes just keep cropping up in your spoken word, your written word, until someone tells you otherwise, which can be embarrassing and might hold you back from reaching that next level of competency with a language. So I suppose learning even very basic written English at quite an early age, I know simple words like hello, and, mum, dad, simple nouns that you might find around the house, objects, might prevent you from having to make that extra leap later when you're trying to figure out how to say a word by, crowbarring a version of your own language into English written word.
Do you think it also helps with sentence structure?
I think, of course.
So it's not only just how you have individual words, but how these are put together in that particular sequence. I mean, I have a sentence which I often hear from non-native speakers when they say, "I wonder what time is it?" I wonder what time is it, because they've got the word "what" there, so it must be a question.
Yeah.
Rather than now saying, "I wonder what time it is,"
exactly,
because it's not a question. And they can pick this up if they're, on the lookout by seeing this in written English.
Indeed.
It's not necessarily part of a sentence, part of a lesson.
Yeah, quite so. Or indeed, what's the time? or even more native applications of the same kind of thing. You gain a familiarity for those kind of things only by repetition and continual engagement with the language, which you can get by, you know, picking up a book every night or just reading the subtitles perhaps on a local film. That's probably quite a good way of engaging with it, because then you can make the leap between your mother tongue and the English language in its written form as well. But I think, yes, it's very important to take those building blocks and understand how to form larger sentences and paragraphs with them. Because, I mean, of course, sometimes in languages, these words are actually, they are one word originally, and you might have to separate them to form a correct English sentence.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. And I think that this comes because a book is infinitely patient. It won't say, oh, come on, you know, pick it up, for heaven's sake, and start to get to grips with it.
The frustrations comes from yourself, doesn't it?
It's there, always there, the same sentence structure. If only you could be pointed to that and learn that, then you will speak good English for the rest of your life. So I think that about sums it up.
I hope so. Well, hopefully everyone who sees this will go away and pick up a book. Pick up a book, yeah. choose a good book from your local library or bookshop, and get to work understanding it, because you'll never look back, I suppose.
I don't think you ever will.